Hi, in this video I'm going to show you how to use the MPD 218 to make some MIDI beats in Pro Tools. We need to verify a couple of settings on the Akai before we get started. The first thing we want to do is make sure that it says Control Bank A. If it's not set with the red light under A, you just hit the button a couple of times and it'll cycle through A, B, and C with both of them on. You want to make sure it's on A, so just hit the button until it's just letter A. The next thing you want to do is make sure that the full level button is on. This allows the pads to transmit the full velocity range, which is for more dynamic range in the drum sounds. One of the things that Akai is known for is its responsiveness to velocity, which makes the drum beats very musical. If you find that if you're new to this and your drum beats are kind of all over the map, some are hard and some are loud and some are soft and kind of faint, and you haven't quite got the hang of it yet, you might want to turn that off. But once you start getting used to it, turn it back on, because that'll give you much more musical expression. The last thing we want to set up, and you may not want to use this if you don't want to, but the note repeat function, if you hit a pad while it's recording with this note repeat button down, it'll do sort of like a glitchy drum kind of a sound. And we want to set that up, so work with Pro Tools in case you want to use it. So that's what the NR config button is about. If you hold down NR config, it will make these other white labels on the pads active. So when you hold down NR config, they're going to light up to show how they're set. First of all, we want to set the clock to external clock. We want the clock to be coming from Pro Tools to the MPD. You might find that it's set to tap tempo, and that's used if you're playing live and you don't have any sort of clock source and you just want to be able to set the tempo live. You set it by tapping it a few times and it'll pick up your tempo. But we really want to be using the external clock so that it matches our metronome from Pro Tools. So while you're holding down the NR config button, tap the pad 15 external clock. You also want to define then what rhythmic value that repeat will be. And these are labeled here again in the white. You've got quarter, eighth notes, 16th notes, and 32nd notes. While you're holding down the NR config, tap one of the pads, and that will determine the rhythmic division when you hold down note repeat, and it'll make straight 16ths or straight 32nds or whatever. So those are what you need to set up. Set it to bank A, set the full level on, get your note repeat particularly set up to external clock, maybe 16th notes. And now we're going to flip over to Pro Tools, and I'll show you how to do the session. Now what we're going to do is we're going to set up our Pro Tools session to work with the Akai so that we can lay down some MIDI beats. I've already got Pro Tools running, so I'm just going to go over here and do Command N for a new file. 44.1, we're going to use broadcast wave files, and we're going to switch to 32-bit now. We're going to be using 32-bit float for internal processing, which is going to give us a little bit higher dynamic range and also a little bit higher quality. So we're going to hit OK. I'm going to save it in my folder, which I haven't put your guys' folders in yet, but this is going to be the MIDI screaming. Okay, MIDI beat demo. So I'm going to show you how to build a session. We're not going to be using templates anymore. This is the advanced class, so I'm going to show you how to make your own session in order to connect with the Akai and lay down some MIDI beats. So first thing we're going to do is Command-Shift-N. We're going to make ourselves a stereo instrument track, which is where the software drum machine is going to go. So one stereo instrument track. Then we're also going to add some MIDI tracks. We need to add maybe, I don't know, give yourself 4 or 5 MIDI tracks. So 5 MIDI. Command-Shift-N. 1 stereo master. So 1 stereo master. And then go up to track and give yourself a click track so that you can lay your beats down in sync. We have to set up a few things on Pro Tools in order to make it work with the Akai for MIDI beat. For making MIDI beats, we want to use loops. We want to be able to layer things over each other. So we got to be able to make sure that the thing is set up right. First thing we want to do is make sure that loop playback is on, but loop record is not. So Command-Shift-L to turn on loop playback. You'll know that it is on because you'll see it there in the playback button as a little circle. Command-Shift-L turns it on and off. We want to turn the conductor track off. Conductor track is used to make tempo changes and meter changes within a song. We're just going to have it sit at a single tempo and a single meter, so we don't want the conductor track on. When you turn the conductor track off, then your tempo is controlled by this setting, and I'm just going to turn it down a little bit from 120. We want to have the metronome on. We also need to have this button on, which is Midi Merge, which allows us to, as we loop through a pattern, to keep adding to it. So let's see. I think that's it. Let's flip over to the mix window and set up our instrument. So here we have our instrument track, we have our 5 MIDI tracks, we have our master and our click track. So click on the insert of the instrument track, multi-channel plug-in instrument, go down to contact stereo, not 5.1 but just stereo, and wait a second, it'll open up. You'll see a list of all the software synths that we have built into this computer. There's a slider that you can grab just to the right of the list, go all the way down to the bottom. You'll see Studio Drummer. Click on the instrument just below Studio Drummer. These are the kits that are loaded in. We're going to use Session Kit Full, so double click on Session Kit Full. You'll see a nice shiny picture of the drum kit that you're going to be using. I'm going to go over here. Now you should not do this. I have to do this for the purposes of this demo video. I need to turn the volume down, otherwise it just totally blasts the video. But you should leave yours up. But now I can go over here to the Akai and I should be able to get some sounds. Yep, so we can close this up. We have to do one more thing here to make this work. We need to click on the output of each of these MIDI tracks. This is really important. And choose channel 1 for each of them. Because if you don't do this, they won't work. This is a little bit like a send bus. We have these MIDI tracks that need to connect to this software synth on the instrument track. So the output of these MIDI tracks don't actually make sound on their own. They just trigger this software drum machine. So we want to make sure that they are set to channel 1. You'll notice that by default they aren't set to any channel, which is unfortunate because it looks like they're ready to go, but they're not. You have to make sure that you have them set to channel 1. Alright, so I think that makes us all good to go. The next thing we want to do is set up a loop that we're going to record, so I'm just going to use the command bracket right to zoom in a little bit. I want to make a 4-measure loop. I'm going to set my grid. I want to be in grid setting, and I want to set my grid to the bar so that when I drag across the ruler here to set the loop, you'll see that it forces me to select a whole measure. I want to make sure that I'm selecting a whole measure and not just by accident part of a measure, because if you're set to 1/8 notes or something, you might by accident not select the whole measure and it'll throw everything off. We're going to go into record mode on the instrument track. We're going to have a 2-measure count off. So we want to make sure that the count off is highlighted. So there's a lot of things to pay attention to here. We want to have the metronome on, we want to have Midi Merge on, we want to have loop playback on, we want to have our count off, we want to select a number of measures that will be our loop. So now we can go into record and actually play some beats. So here we go. I'm going to hit Command Spacebar. It's going to give me 2 measures count off, and I'm going to lay down starting with a hi-hat track. Now with the merge on, it means that I'm going to be able to go in here and lay down the kick and snare on top of that. And then if I want to quantize it, which means make things lock to the beat, do a right click, go down to Event Operations, Quantize, and this is where you're going to set up the value of your quantize. Quantizing is like justification. It makes things lock to a grid. We want to quantize the note on, we want to keep the duration, and we don't want to quantize the note off usually. And we want to set the grid to something that is the highest rhythmic division of the beat, but not unnecessarily high. So I didn't play anything that were finer rhythmic divisions than an eighth note. So I'm going to leave it on eighth note, and I'm going to hit apply. And that'll tighten it all up. Okay, so I'm going to delete that. I'm going to show you one other way of doing this. I want to use these separate tracks. So a lot of times it's beneficial to have the kick, the snare, the hat at least separated out on different tracks, because if you want to loop them separately, you don't want to have to loop everything all the time. You want to loop the kick but not the snare and the hat, or vice versa. If it's all on one track, it gets to be clumsy and time consuming, so it's usually better to record kick on one track, snare and hat on another. So I'm going to show you how to do that on the fly with merge without stopping. So again, we're going to use our 2 measure count off. I'm going to lay down the hat first. I'm going to use Command Spacebar to go into record, wait for my 2 bars and start playing. My hat's going to be here, my kick's going to be here, and my snare is going to be here. Now, as it's playing, click the next track into record. And whenever you're ready, put down the kick. 1. Now, I know that didn't turn out so hot. I got a bad note in there, but I'm going to keep going. And put the snare in on the next one. And I did it again. Okay. So now let's go in here and fix these little things that didn't turn out so hot. So let's choose clips and go to notes. Use my grabber tool. Go in there, grab that wrong bad note. Hit the delete key. And then let's go back to clips. And let's do the same thing with the snare track. Clips, notes, let's get rid of that. Now we can quantize it and tighten it up. Hold the shift key down while you're selecting those so they all can be selected at one time. Event operations, quantize. Still eighth notes. Let's hit it. Okay. So that's how it works. I hope you have some fun. This is pretty cool. And then you can lay other tracks over it, do some jamming, do some looping. Yeah, come up with something cool. All right. See ya. Bye.